The best way to build muscle according to Mike Mentzer. Many workout routines we follow are based on conflicting information, myths that have been perpetuated for decades, and practices that fail to consider individuality, rest, and the proper intensity each exercise should have. The result? Months or even years in the gym, and despite all the effort, little to no satisfying muscle growth. However, there is a training method that promises to simplify all of this while still delivering extremely solid muscle gains. The method advocated by Mike Mentzer, one of the greatest bodybuilding icons of all time. For those who don't know, Mike Mentzer was an American bodybuilder, well known for his revolutionary training approach called heavy duty. In short, he believed that most people were training more than necessary and resting less than they should, which would lead to stagnation, injuries, and frustration. Although he had a relatively short career on stage, mainly due to disagreements with the competitive bodybuilding scene at the time and the way he was judged in contests, Mentzer was a pioneer in promoting a high-intensity training method with fewer sets, low volume, and proper rest intervals. In addition, he brought attention to discussions about the importance of understanding the body's physiology rather than simply copying the workout of someone stronger or more famous at the gym. Mike Mentzer's philosophy revolved around the belief that, in order to progress, the body needs to go through a stimulus strong enough to break its current barriers, but also requires adequate rest to recover and grow. In his view, the most common mistake made by bodybuilding practitioners was the infamous overtraining, workouts with high repetitions, too many sets, and a training frequency beyond what the body could handle. In other words, it was as if everyone was wasting too much ammunition without allowing the body to recover and get stronger. But don't mistake Mentzer's philosophy for less effort. Quite the opposite. In the heavy-duty method, each set is performed with extremely high intensity at the absolute limit. The idea is to push the muscle to total failure, executing each rep with maximum focus, without excessively spacing out workouts and always training at your peak. While many believe the formula for muscle growth is doing multiple sets and repeating the same muscle group 2 or even 3 times a week, Mike was firm in his belief that if you truly train heavy, you don't need to and shouldn't repeat that workout session so often in a short period. He believed that increasing training volume might offer some results in the beginning, but sooner or later, the lack of rest would lead to the dreaded stagnation, or even worse, a decline in performance. This is something we see often in practice when someone goes to the gym religiously but doesn't progress in weight, doesn't improve their rest times, and their physique remains the same, sometimes even showing signs of fatigue and small injuries appearing throughout the body. Beyond the factor of rest, Mentzer talked a lot about load progression. If the goal is hypertrophy, it's not just about doing repetitions for the sake of it. The muscle must be progressively overloaded, whether through increasing weight, controlling the eccentric phase more precisely, reducing rest time between sets, or combining these elements. At this point, nutrition is also essential. Although Mike Mentzer was primarily associated with high-intensity training, he always emphasized that the body needs quality nutrients to recover from the microtears caused by heavy training. What he strongly criticized was the indiscriminate use of supplements or overeating without monitoring food quality, as anything the body doesn't use turns into fat or creates unnecessary metabolic stress. Another crucial point in Mentzer's methodology is mindset. He believed that there was no use in performing exercises automatically, following reps and sets without a real purpose. Every repetition should be seen as a challenge to overcome, maximizing the mind-muscle connection to recruit as many muscle fibers as possible during each movement. Training with focus requires clarity in every step of execution, speed, range of motion, body alignment, breathing, and of course, intensity. This approach aligns with that of many contemporary athletes who also emphasize the importance of training with quality rather than just quantity. Mentzer also insisted that patience was a key part of the process. There's no point in trying to gain 22 pounds of muscle in just a few weeks without respecting the body's biological needs. In practice, the heavy-duty protocol recommended few sets, sometimes just 1 or 2 per exercise, performed with perfect technique and taken to the absolute limit. There was also the rest interval between sessions. which could be 48 to even 72 hours or more for the same muscle group, depending on the intensity applied. This is radically different from what is seen in many gym workout plans, where trainees perform 3 or 4 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions per exercise, 3 or 4 times a week, believing that more training means more results. Mentzer would probably say that more intensity with less volume means not only better results, but also better health. One of the ongoing discussions surrounding heavy duty is biological individuality. Not everyone responds the same way to high intensity, and not everyone can reach the same level of true failure in exercises. That's why some people adapt the method to themselves, adding a few warm-up sets and ensuring they achieve maximum muscle contraction without compromising their joints and tendons. Mentzer himself acknowledged that every person had their own injury history, progression pace, and specific lifestyle that could influence results. But if there is one consensus in his philosophy, it's that excessive training without rest is just as harmful as being sedentary. In other words, there's no point in killing yourself at the gym every day if you don't give your body the time it needs to recover. Muscle hypertrophy actually happens during rest. The stimulus comes from training, but adaptation and growth occur when the body is at rest, well-nourished, free from unnecessary stress, and ready to return to the training cycle in the next session. This raises the question, how do you build a workout based on Mike Mentzer's principles? First, you should select only a few exercises, but ones that are truly effective at recruiting the maximum number of muscle fibers. For the chest, for example, there's no need to do 4 types of bench press plus 3 types of flies. If you perform a decline or flat bench press with the right weight, in the correct range of motion, and to failure, that is often enough to stimulate significant development, as long as you maintain consistency and progression. Then, the idea is to allow a considerable rest interval before training that same muscle again. Mentzer advocated using heavy weights, but always with impeccable execution. If you can't control the weight throughout the entire repetition, then it's probably beyond your capabilities. There is no room for ego in the heavy-duty method. You shouldn't just move the weight from point A to point B, but do so with control, ensuring that both the concentric and eccentric phases of the movement are properly executed. This training style creates intense micro-tears in the muscles, requiring a longer recovery time afterward. And if you're tempted to think this method is easy or less hard work, just talk to someone who has tried a single Mentzer-style set to total failure. You'll quickly understand how brutal it can be. Many contemporary athletes, including Dorian Yates, followed principles very similar to those of Mike Mentzer. Yates himself often said he did very few sets, but at extremely high intensity, and he's a multi-time bodybuilding champion who proves the effectiveness of this approach. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because having access to the right information is what will truly help you progress in the long run in the fitness world. The principle of maximum intensity, for example, doesn't mean rushing through everything carelessly. On the contrary, it means being meticulous and patient with each repetition. Mentzer often spoke about movement control, arguing that in heavy duty, the eccentric phase, the part where the muscle is lengthening under tension, should be performed especially slowly and deliberately. This slow execution not only maximizes muscle tension, but also helps prevent cheating, which is just the body finding ways to make the movement easier and reduce the load on the target muscle group. You've probably seen people training with momentum, swinging their torso, unnecessarily involving other muscles, or even having their gym partner practically lift the bar for them. Mentzer saw all of this as wasteful because, in his view, if the target muscle didn't do the work, what was the point of the repetition? The concept of intensity, in this case, was 100% focused on the quality of the stimulus, not on cheating to lift more weight. Another key point Mike Mentzer emphasized was training frequency. While many routines suggest training the same muscle group multiple times a week, Mentzer was against this approach for most people. He explained that if you truly reach failure in those few movements, there's no need to train the same muscle 2 or 3 times a week, as that might not allow enough time for recovery. The rule here is, did you really train heavy? Then give your body a rest period proportional to the level of stress it endured. Of course, Some critics argue that this method involves too little volume, and that without volume, hypertrophy doesn't happen. Mentzer would counter that hypertrophy comes from a strong muscle-tearing stimulus, and that excessive volume would only extend the workout duration without improving stimulus quality. While controversial, it's undeniable that many people have reported breaking through months-long plateaus after reducing training frequency and focusing more on intensity. But how do you apply all of this to everyday life, especially for those training in crowded gyms who often have to adapt to available machines, schedules, and even the lack of specific equipment? The idea is to make the most of every opportunity to train while maintaining the principle of fewer sets and maximum intensity. If you only have, for example, half an hour available, this method could be ideal, as you'll do fewer exercises, but at extremely high intensity. And for the rest of the day or the following days, prioritize quality sleep, a balanced diet, and proper hydration to repair the stimulated muscle tissue. In Mike Mentzer's opinion, the mind is the starting point for everything. If you begin your workout already mentally drained and unmotivated, it's hard to reach true muscle failure. True failure, or concentric failure, means that in a given exercise, while maintaining proper form, you physically cannot complete another rep, no matter how hard you try. This doesn't happen easily if you're chatting, checking your phone, or distracted. It requires complete focus and determination. One of the secrets of heavy duty is that it practically forces the trainee to take every repetition seriously, since there's no room for second chances with endless extra sets. Mentzer also emphasized training each muscle as a link in a chain. There's no point in having a powerful back if your abs, arms, or legs are underdeveloped in comparison. He believed the body should be trained harmoniously, though his philosophy didn't prescribe endless exercises for each part. Instead, he promoted a smart selection of compound movements like squats, bench presses, deadlifts, pull-ups, rows, and shoulder presses, exercises that activate large portions of the body globally. From there, weak points could receive extra attention with a more specific movement, but always respecting the overall principle of few sets at high intensity. Many trainees wonder how to measure intensity and determine when they're ready to increase weight or adjust rest intervals. For Mentzer, the body is the best indicator. When you truly reach muscle failure, the sensation during and after training leaves little room for doubt. You have that undeniable feeling that another rep would have been impossible. Then, in the hours or days that follow, depending on your conditioning level, you experience muscle soreness, but not to the point of injury or incapacity. It's a natural discomfort from recovery that decreases as your body adapts. If you don't feel anything like this, you might not be training with the intensity required by the method. If you experience extreme pain that hinders even simple movements for many days, you may be overloading or executing the exercises incorrectly. This balance is highly personal, which is why each trainee should ideally track their progress in weight, repetitions, and even perceived effort during workouts. This way, it becomes clear when the body is ready for more weight, when it's time to reduce reps, or in some cases, slightly increase volume. After all, Mentzer's heavy-duty methodology isn't a rigid, unchanging rulebook, but rather a set of principles that can be adapted as long as the core foundation is maintained. Some people ask, what about repetitions? How many should I do? Mike Mentzer generally recommended around 6 to 10 reps, depending on the exercise and specific goal, but always with the guideline of reaching failure. To him, counting reps was meaningless if you weren't reaching that point of exhaustion. He also warned about the danger of cheating at the end of a set, because it's precisely in that moment of pain and struggle that the muscle is most stimulated to grow. Overcoming the temptation to stop a set at the 7th rep, when the 8th and 9th reps are the ones that will truly create the greatest stimulus, is a huge mental challenge. Another indispensable pillar in Mentzer's philosophy was consistency. He believed you could only truly assess whether the method was working if you gave yourself enough time to adapt. There's no point in trying heavy duty for 2 weeks, and if nothing happens, going back to your old routine. It takes at least a few months of dedication, tracking progress, and learning how your body responds to this training model. It's a process of fine-tuning your approach until it fits your individual profile perfectly. Of course, all this care and dedication don't mean you can't alternate periods of heavy-duty training with other methods. Some professional bodybuilders cycled through high-intensity phases and then switched to moderate volume periodization, both to give their tendons and ligaments a break and to vary muscle stimulation. Every body reacts differently. For some, staying in ultra-high intensity for too long can lead to mental burnout. For others, it's the perfect fuel to keep motivation high, since the sessions are short but extremely challenging. It's worth emphasizing once again that Mike Mentzer was a voice that challenged conventional wisdom and even the idols of his time, who advocated massive training routines. In an era where countless outrageous fitness promises flood the internet, going back to the roots of a method like Mentzer's could be exactly what you need to break through barriers that once seemed impossible. In the end, what Mentzer proposed was an intelligent partnership with your muscles rather than a stubborn battle to see who can handle more reps or how many extra hours I can stay in the gym. With all this in mind, it's up to each individual to decide which path to take. Not everyone will immediately adapt to heavy duty. Some prefer hybrid systems, while others fall in love with the method as soon as they see how effective it can be. And here's a valuable piece of advice from Mentzer himself. Never stop learning about the subject. The more you study, the better you understand how your body works, and the less time you waste on strategies that don't apply to you. After all, every human being is unique in terms of genetics, metabolism, and lifestyle, but we all follow the basic laws of physiology. If applied intelligently, these laws unlock continuous muscle growth. This is the essence of what Mike Mentzer stood for, and many who follow in his footsteps say they never went back to other training styles after seeing the transformations it can produce. So here's something to think about. If you want different results, maybe you need different strategies. If you enjoyed this and want to start applying it, don't miss the only 2 exercises you need to build massive legs. The video is popping up on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, my friend, and may God bless you.